Good morning. We will pay attention to income received in advance. It sometimes happens in an enterprise that income is already received for the next accounting period because people normally have to pay rent in advance. So if you rent out part of your building, the people will pay you in advance. So you receive money in this financial year that should actually be allocated to the next financial year. In a case where you receive money in advance, you will have to adjust the income account so that the income for the current year can be closed off to the profit and loss account. The amount that you received in advance must be shown as a current liability so that you can show that you received money in this year that was actually supposed to be for the following year. So you have to provide a service free of charge in the following year that you're not going to receive money for in that specific year. Examples of income received in advance is, for instance, rent income or commission received. In the general ledger, rent income is an income and will have a credit balance. So if I want to reduce the rent income, I will debit the rent income account and I will create a liability and credit income received in advance. Then the income is reduced so that you will just show the correct amount in your income statement. You created a liability that you can show in your balance sheet. At the beginning of the next accounting period, you must reverse these entries that you made. So that means where you debited rent income, you will now go and credit rent income so that you can show in the second year that you already received income for that year. That liability is now closed, so I will debit the income received in advance. The following information is available at 30 June 2015. That is the end of the financial year. The total amount that was received for rent during the year was 62,400. The rent is actually 4,800 Rand per month. So if I look at my financial year that starts on 1 July 2014 and it ends on 30 June 2015, it means that I must work out how much money I'm supposed to get for these 12 months. So I will take the 4,500 multiplied with 12 months, and that will give me a total income of 57,600. The total rent that must be shown in the profit and loss must therefore be 57,600. We always show the actual amount. If nothing is prepaid and nothing is accrued, that is the amount that will go to your income statement. In the balance sheet, we have to show what is our liability at the end of the year. So I take the total amount received, 62,400, less the amount that we are supposed to get for the current year, and then I can work out and see that 4,800 was received in advance. So I will debit my rent income account to reduce the income account. I will credit income received in advance to create a liability. Then the rent income account will be transferred to the profit and loss, and the amount that we showed there is the amount that must go to the profit and loss account, the 75,600. At the beginning of the next financial year, we must do a reverse entry. So there I debited rent income, now I will credit rent income. At the end of the year, I credited income received in advance. At the beginning of the next year, we will debit it. In the rent income account, we have a balance of 62,400. So every time during the year that we received money, we debited the bank and we credited rent income. We calculated that 4,800 is not for the current year, so I must reduce this amount with 4,800 so that I can calculate what is the actual amount that must go to the profit and loss account. Because I reduced the rent income on the debit side, I will credit income received in advance and create a liability that will be shown in the balance sheet. On the first day of the next financial year, I have to close this income received in advance because this was an account that was just created on the last day of the financial year so that we could show what is the liabilities of the business at the end of the year. The first day of the next year, I close this account. Because I debit the account, I will credit the rent income account. Now, if I look at my rent income account, I can see in year 2, we already received the income of 4,800. What did we actually do in this entry? We had the figure 62,400 that was received. We calculated what is the amount that must go to the profit and loss. Then we calculated a balancing figure, the difference between the 57,600 and the 62,400. And we actually wrote down a balance, and there we bring down our balance to the next financial year. What did we learn? When income is received in advance for the following year, an adjustment must be completed so the amount can be reduced in this income account and the correct amount can be transferred to the profit and loss account. We must create a liability, income received in advance, so that we can show the liability in the balance sheet as a current liability. On the first day of the next financial year, you have to complete a reverse entry so that the income received in advance can be closed, and we will debit it and we will credit our income account again.